As we inch ever closer to the winter solstice, temperatures continue to drop, and the thought of soon approaching snow and frigid weather is in the minds of many. In this video, we'll discuss how this winter season may shape up and give you a comprehensive overview of the upcoming season, so let's get into it. Of course, before I get into the forecasts, we need to know what factors will be in play over the course of the winter. As we discussed in the outlooks, the biggest and most important of these is the ENSO, or El Niño Southern Oscillation. This has two main phases, El Niño and La Niña, which respectively feature warmer or cooler ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. These phases have widespread impacts on the weather that America gets during every season, especially winter. For this winter season, we are still expected to be in the La Niña phase, though the models still hint at a potential neutral phase, which I will discuss shortly. A majority of the models we use to predict the ENSO phase say that we will likely see this neutral phase or a weak La Niña during the winter months, which is seen as they dip just slightly below the zero line. However, as these models continue to run, more and more of them suggest we may be in the neutral phase instead, with almost every model indicating a weak La Niña or a neutral phase. A typical winter-time La Niña pattern features colder and wetter conditions across much of the northern tier, focused especially in the northwest, and warmer but drier weather in much of the south. The polar jet stream tends to be more variable and lurks further south during a La Niña, which can lead to more numerous and more severe cold outbreaks in America. As I discussed in my outlooks, this was seen recently in February of 2021 across much of the country, where a major cold blast sent temperatures more than 50 degrees below average in spots, breaking many weather records for more than 10 states. The cold also brought significant snowfall from the Sierra and Cascades to the Texas Gulf Coast to the northeast. We have already seen multiple weaker shots of Arctic air since the start of December, and a La Niña winter makes similar, weaker Arctic blasts more likely to happen. However, this neutral phase could throw a wrench in this expected La Niña pattern. Once again, the models have shifted slightly in favor of the neutral phase this winter. This would mean that the polar jet stream would shift further east, bringing the colder temperatures further toward the east coast than is expected in La Niña, with the south still staying warmer than average. This pattern is somewhat similar to what we have seen already in the month of December, with the pushes of cold air being centered more toward the central and eastern U.S. than the west. Knowing this, the northern and eastern U.S. could be much cooler than originally anticipated. Next, we'll get into what past winters can tell us about this upcoming season. This is an analog map showing the temperature anomalies across a selection of years, and the years used had a weak La Niña during the winter season. The time frame goes from December to March, and as you can see, a majority of the United States were near or below average in such years, with any warmer than average conditions staying down in the southwest. Next is a map showing what conditions could be like in a neutral winter. The time frame goes from January to March, and as you can see, a vast majority of the northern, central, and eastern United States were cooler than average in such years, with warmer than average conditions in the southwest. ENSO neutral would bring the colder than average conditions further east and south than in a La Niña winter, and is more similar to the pattern we've seen so far. Now, here is a map showing the average snowfall during a weak La Niña winter. As you can see, much of the northern tier tends to experience more snow than in a normal winter, especially so across the west coast, northern plains, and New England. Unfortunately for snow lovers in the southwest, mid-south, Appalachians, and mid-Atlantic, these areas tend to see less snowfall than normal in a weak La Niña winter, especially so in the mid-Atlantic. Lastly, before the models, here is what the National Weather Service is forecasting for this winter. Their forecast says that the northwest has the best chance of seeing below average temperatures, while much of the south and east is likely to see warmer than average temps. Equal chances of warmer or colder than average conditions are across most of the Great Lakes, Midwest, Central Rockies, and portions of the West Coast. They also call for wetter than normal conditions in the Northwest, Northern Rockies, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley, and drier than average conditions across the southern U.S., with equal chances of either in the Northern Plains, Central Rockies, and Northeast Coast. Now, we'll get into the models. We'll start off with the European Center's forecast model. Like in the outlooks, it still forecasts warmer than average conditions across much of the U.S., though now there is a chance of near or below normal temps in the northern plains. A winter like this would feature much less snowfall than normal across nearly the entire country. Our next model is the CFS, or American model. It paints a similar picture to the Euro, with warmth across the nation, though some average to below average conditions look possible across the northern tier. It is worth noting that this area of below average temps in the north has shifted further east since the forecast run I showed in the last outlook. The Canadian model shows warmth in the southern two-thirds of the country but gives the northern tier, especially the Great Lakes, significantly below average temperatures, in some cases reaching a mean of 2 to 4 degrees below average for the season as a whole. Our last temperature model, the North American, is less bullish on the extreme temps, giving slightly above average to most of the country, though much like the CFS, more average to below average temps are trying to push south with each new run. Moving now to precipitation, we start again with the European model. This model is very similar to the National Weather Service's precip forecast, with above average in the Northwest and Great Lakes, and with below average conditions across the southern tier. Next, our CFS model is similar to the European as it gives a wet winter to much of the Northwest, Mid-South, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and Northeast, while giving a dry winter to the Southwest, Southern Plains, and Florida. The Canadian model is still bullish on giving a dry winter to nearly the entire country, except for a few spots in the northern Rockies and Cascades. Lastly, for the models, the North American is very similar to the Euro and CFS and hasn't changed much since last outlook, with above average precip in the Northwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley, and below average precip in the southern tier. Finally, here are my thoughts on this winter season. Starting with temperatures, much of the southern two-thirds of the U.S. looks to have a good chance of staying at or above average, with the greatest chance being across the Southwest. The best chance of below-average temperatures will be across the northern tier, where we've seen the cold air blasts already this season. I expect at least a few more major Arctic blasts in this region through the winter season, especially in January. Noting the continuous model changes, I have shifted this cooler than normal area further south and east than in my outlooks. In terms of precipitation, most of the southern tier still looks to stay drier than average, especially so across the Southwest. With a more active polar and Pacific jet and a less active subtropical jet, storms will tend to go north of these areas, leading to less rain and snow than normal. Many states in the Southwest already have severe levels of drought, so this continued lack of rain will be a big issue. The Northwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and northern New England look to have the best chance of seeing above normal precipitation. Once again, an active polar jet stream tends to bring many clippers and storms into the Northwest, which will lead to heavy rainfall and abundant mountain snow. There also looks to be an increased likelihood of both strong storms and clippers that track across the Great Lakes this winter, which would bring considerable rain and snow to the Great Lakes and Northeast. Moving on to snowfall. The Northwest still looks to have the best chance of above-average snowfall, with a frequent storm track and near to slightly below-average temperatures. The Cascades and northern Rockies may do especially well this winter, assuming nothing major changes in the forecast. The Great Lakes and northern New England have decent chances at above-normal snowfall as well, with an active storm track and average to below-average temps. In the areas where heavy lake effect has set up, some towns and cities may already have seen their average snowfall for the entire season, especially near Erie, Watertown, and south of Buffalo. From the last outlook, I've shifted this above-average area slightly further north due to less confidence in areas south of the lakes, which is unfortunate for snow lovers in those areas, but I believe it's warranted. Now, unfortunately for snow lovers in the Mid-Atlantic, Appalachians, Mid-South, Southern Plains, and Southwest, conditions still don't look favorable for these areas to see a lot of snowfall this year, with likely above-average temperatures and an unfavorable storm track leading to more rain than snow in the Mid-Atlantic and South, and prolonged dry spells in the Southwest. Of course, this does not mean you won't see any snow, but your chances of seeing average or above-average snowfall is lower than in a normal year. Last but not least, here is my country-wide forecast for the upcoming winter season. Starting off in the Northwest, this area still looks to stay very wet and snowy during the winter, though there will be some calm periods. With active polar and Pacific jet streams, frequent storms look to pummel this region, leading to above-average precipitation in many places. Areas just to the south and east of the green shade won't cash in as much on the big storms the Northwest will see. These areas will be somewhat warmer than average, especially further south, and dry at times. Areas just east of the Rockies should see both cold air outbreaks and warm-ups during the season, which should make areas here average out to near normal. You may be drier than is typical during winter, though. The Southwest has already been very warm and dry this month, and that trend should continue throughout the winter season. The drought that most areas in this red region have will continue to worsen, and ski conditions won't be too great in the southern Rockies. The northern plains and Great Lakes have the best chance of seeing brutal cold and above-average snowfall this year. The active jet stream will bring frequent clippers, lake-effect snow events, and Arctic blasts to this region, with a few warmer and drier spells in between. The lake effect has already been insane this year across Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York, and will only continue to pile up as long as the lakes are unfrozen. Areas just south of here in the Midwest and Ohio Valley will see cold outbreaks like the northern plains and northern Great Lakes, but they won't be as brutal. Most areas here should expect average to below average snowfall this winter, but this zone will be sandwiched between the cold and snowy conditions to your north and the warm and dry conditions to your south, so you'll see your fair share of both. Much of New England looks to be snowier than average, with slightly below average temperatures and a somewhat active storm track. Again, the lake effect regions will continue to see major events this winter, especially early in the season. Of course, if northern New England sees a lot of snow, southern New England and the Northeast will get action too, though it still looks to be more rain or mix. Frequent clippers and Great Lakes cutters should bring a lot of precipitation to this area, though it won't all be snow. Unfortunately for the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Mid-South, slightly mild temps and an unfavorable storm track look to bring considerably less snowfall than average this winter. Of course, one good storm in some of these areas is enough to break above average, but overall, snowfall looks to be limited. The Mid-South and Central Plains will be warmer than average this winter, with likely less snowfall than average but more ice or mixing events. If just enough cold air can sink into this region when moisture is present, there is the possibility for significant ice or sleet events. Lastly, a vast majority of the southern tier will stay warmer and drier than average this winter, especially so in southern Florida. Though many areas in the deep south have been hit hard by rain this month, it does not look to continue into the new year at this time. Thanks for watching. We've had some significant changes in the forecast compared to the outlooks, so tell me in the comments if you're excited. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and please leave any feedback in the comments below, or tell me the city where you live, and I'll give an outlook for your area specifically. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.